Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is Tommy Robinson's sentence, the statement he made prior to going into court to be published after the court, and a consideration into the aspect of him being arrested over the phone PIN number. That is a bit bizarre. So as I say, there's two parts to this video. The first is the court case today. The second is the detention of Tommy Robinson under a terrorism charge previously, last week. So the first thing, the story itself, what actually happened here was, a while ago, a few years ago now, there was a video hit the internet where an older white boy got a hold of a Syrian boy and poured water over his face. People were saying it was like waterboarding and it was terrible, and it got a fair amount of coverage online and in fact hit the mainstream media. What Tommy Robinson done, like many people, when they see things like that, they consider as there's a reason that led to that, what happened before it. And they started talking to people at the school, children and teachers and parents, etc. And what he obtained from his investigations was a different version of the story. And the version Tommy learned was that the older kid's young sister had been threatened by this boy, and the boy had been a bit notorious in the school for bullying, etc. So Tommy started putting out social media posts about this, excuse me, and telling the other side, the other version of a story. And he ended up in court for that. And the family of the Syrian kid took him to court, sued for damages, and a court case happened, a civil court case. And in that civil court case, the prosecution side, that was the Syrian, put one witness in the stand, and that was the boy's father, to tell us how nice a kid he was and how what the other people are going to say is inaccurate. And what the other people were saying was they were giving examples of bullying and aggression and all these things. So there was, a number of teachers, pupils, parents from the school provided evidence to suggest that Tommy's version of the story was more accurate than the Syrian. But the judge, who made a decision which has been questioned by many, that he was guilty of defamation, and there was a large sum, six-figure sum of money ordered to reward the Syrian boy. And part of that decision and sentencing, as it were, at that time was that Tommy could no longer speak about the situation. And I'm not sure of the timing on this, so you need to excuse my ignorance on this one point. I'm not sure if his documentary had been released, had been made at that point or not. I think it may have been in production, but I'm not sure if it was completed, but I may be ignorant on that. So Tommy sat on the documentary, silenced as it was named, for a long time because the court had said that you couldn't show it. And I was like, talk about the situation at all. But he decided that in the interests of the public interest, that the truth should come out. I need to watch what I'm saying here. His version, the documentary, the people who defended him in court, their version of the story. He felt that the public should know about this. So in July, during a large protest in London, he played the video and subsequently released it on social media. And he broke the terms of the court order, and he was then liable for contempt of court. And that is where we were up to. And he was arrested after and released that protest. And he came back to Britain, presented himself into a police office, was held, and went to court today. That court case was always going to be happening today. But there was this weird bit in the middle where he was detained. And I'll come to that in the second part of the video, because that's where the claims of Terrorism Act were brought in. So that's kind of where we were up to today. He went to court, pled guilty, so there was no case to fight, and they got down to discuss sentencing and how that should look. And he was given a 18-month prison sentence, which should see him released with a 50% tariff for good behaviour, and he's made a request to be put in solitary confinement. However, in the meantime, since then, his Twitter feed, Tommy Robinson New Era Twitter feed, has put out a statement. And it said, admin post, Tommy's prepared statement, share this everywhere. This is a speech Tommy prepared for court today. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to give the speech, but it was his wish that you all get to read it for yourself. So, put him on a wee bit of respect and read out what he was wanting to say to the British public. And I'll discuss it when I'm finished, then I'll cover the Terrorism Act arrest. So, Tommy's speech says, Your Honour, I believe in free speech and freedom of the press. My duty as a journalist is to uncover the truth, and I have worked for years to shine light on challenges in society that no one else is willing to speak about. Have you watched the documentary, Your Honour? Now, that question actually didn't need to ask him because the judge did say during the proceedings that he'd watched the video. If you've watched the film Silenced, Your Honour, you will have seen that I did not make accusations. I didn't make assumptions in the film. I simply repeated what I was told by the head teacher of the school and others and what was written in black and white in school documents. I let the witnesses give their testimonies. I made it clear that Jamal, that's a Syrian kid, and his right to reply denies all of their accusations against him. I explained Justice Nicklin's verdict and I explained that I lost the case. There is nothing else I could have included because Jamal didn't bring any evidence to court and he didn't bring anyone to court to speak from apart from his father. Jihad, no teachers, no social workers, no friends. It is for this reporting, for this that I am facing these charges, for this I am facing the prospect of time in a maximum security prison with the risks to my life that presents. Justice Nicklin's verdict in this case is extraordinary, and while the case caused my divorce and bankruptcy, far more important is the impact this verdict has had on those courageous children who came to court to testify in my defence. Justice Nicklin effectively discarded their testimonies. He said he didn't know why they were lying, but called them liars nevertheless. Charlie, a grade A student, didn't even like me or support me, but was courageous enough to come to court to testify. She had a breakdown. She had to be sectioned. Justice Nicklin caused that. Bailey McLaren had tried to commit suicide. Thankfully, he has started to rebuild his life. He has to overcome the lie that he is a racist. Many others have been affected. The collateral damage of this scandalous verdict was too great for the public not to know the truth. Some people still have the legacy media as there to report what is happening, the truth, rather than push strongly biased accounts driven by ideology or political agendas. Well, in this case, the press only attended court in the day Jamal and his father gave their accounts. They then left the court and didn't bother to return to hear the testimony of the children who were witnesses for the defence. The whole balanced picture could not be reported by the legacy media because they weren't there. They weren't interested in what the children testifying for the defence had to say. And then Justice Nicklin tried to prevent the whole picture being given to the public by issuing this injunction, banning the film. Justice Nicklin has banned me from presenting the same evidence that was presented in court. If it is such a clear-cut case, why is it necessary to hide the facts from the public? If they watched the testimonies of the witnesses, they would surely come to the same conclusion as Justice Nicklin. What's the agenda here? Well, the injunction was apparently to protect Jamal's reputation. Yet it's not the reputation of Jamal that's been damaged by this legal circus. I don't wish any ill of Jamal. I personally think he was a victim of his own predatory lawyers and those who blasted his story around the world for their own purpose. It's very telling that Jamal hasn't asked me to be prosecuted in this case. Neither have his lawyers. This case has been brought by the Attorney General, by the government. In my view, there are similarities with the Post Office case. Powerful interests hiding the truth for their own purposes, regardless of the terrible consequences for those innocent children I have mentioned and others. I couldn't have shown the film silenced at any point in the proceedings 3 years. I could have, shown the film silenced at any point in the preceding 3 years. I didn't. However, I did make the decision to play this film in Trafalgar Square on the 27th of July this year, and I am grateful to Elon Musk and X for allowing the film to remain available, for standing for freedom of speech and free press. So if you're asking me whether I plead guilty or not, yes, I am guilty of showing the film in Trafalgar Square on the 27th of July, and I am guilty of journalism. And although not for you, Your Honour, nor for your court, nor for the entire justice system, I do have contempt for Justice Nicklin's ruling and the actions that attempt to hide the truth from the public. Justice Nicklin fell out with his own father before this case, arguing about me. He should have been recused himself before the case even began. The world is watching. I stand for the truth, for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And if that puts me on the wrong side of Justice Nicholas' injunctions, then so be it. If I have to sit in jail for speaking the truth, well, I am just one of many people now that this government is imprisoning for things they say, political prisoners. The government is releasing violent offenders early to make space for people who tweet things they disagree with. Peter Lynch is the first to have paid the ultimate price. A 61-year-old father and grandfather, non-violent, but imprisoned for his views and his speech. If I have to sit in jail for refusing to be silenced for reporting information that was brought to me for journalism, then I am prepared for that. Thank you, Your Honour. Quite remarkable. I'm not sure why that wasn't allowed in court. I don't know if there's a procedural reason for that or not, but kind of think I get it. I understand it. And you may not be a fan of Tommy's, you may dislike Tommy, you may not be interested in this story or indeed believe this version of the story. But my question is, if it wasn't for documentaries, expose type things, where journalists try and attempt to put their version of the truth out, then how many injustices in the world would never have been rectified? How many people would still have suffered? People like the Horizon issue in the Mail, Royal Mail, which Tommy references in his speech, would have not received fair justice if journalists hadn't went against the grain, they were brave, and they went out and spoke about things. And I think it's a travesty, regardless of anybody's opinions of Tommy Robinson or indeed this case, but the fact that you can go to jail in the United Kingdom for putting out a version of a story. If he'd made the documentary on the opposite side of this story, with the other version of this story, nobody would bother. And you could argue that this case, well, a court of law said he was wrong. Well, that's right. It was a court with a judge, not a judge and jury trial, because it was a civil matter. And as Tommy's already suggested here, which I don't know to be true or not true, I don't know anything about this judge, but he suggests that this judge should have taken himself out of the court proceedings before it even started, due to a fallout, an alleged fallout with his own father. So the whole thing's a bit iffy to me. Now, I do understand that Tommy knew fine well what he was doing on the 27th of July. He knew the potential outcome of that. And that's exactly what happened. I'm not sure why he waited 3 years to put the video out. I don't know. Was it ready to go 3 years ago? I told you before, I don't know. One bit of information I don't know is when the video was completed. But he did, in the eyes of the law, break the law. And I don't know if there's any possible outcome today other than the outcome that we had, because he broke an injunction, he went into court and he pled guilty. So he had to be sentenced to something. Just not sure about the constraints on the judge at this point, what he could and couldn't have done. Some are suggesting he could have gave a lighter sentence. I don't know if that's true or false. I'm not that learned on our judiciary, to be perfectly honest with you, but it is what it is. And what's happened here is there's a man now sentenced to 18 months in jail for telling a story, a version of a story. And I don't know how we protect the press if we don't challenge this. And I don't understand why, if anybody in the mainstream media or any documentary journalists out there don't stand up against this. Because who's to decide what the next story is that we have to accept one version of? And that's the bit that worries me. The other thing that worries me is a man's been put in jail, that will that have any knock-on effect to the rest of society? Well, I think there'll be a lot of people upset by this, but it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to get sentenced to something today because he pled guilty for something he says himself he knowingly done, which he knew was breaking a previous court ruling. So that was always going to happen. But another thing, and I kind of think this is an even stranger part of this story, is when he was taken into custody on Friday for reportedly terrorism. He was held in terrorism, under the Terrorism Act. Now, what I've been told, again, I might be wrong, I'm just going on the information I have, which is not massive on this topic, I do admit. But what I understand is the police felt there was text communications between Tommy and people who'd been at his previous rally, who the police felt were suspicious people or whatever I will not go into, and if they felt that there may have been communications in his telephone from these people who they'd seen at his previous rally. But this whole thing, I just can't get my head round, because on the Sunday after the rally, he was heading to the Eurotunnel and was arrested at a port of exit from the country, taken into custody and released on the basis that he'd come back to court today. They then gave the man his freedom, knowing that he's going to go to the border again because he was due to leave the country. He was trying to leave the country when they arrested him the first time. And I find that odd, that it's something that we would do if you had someone who you genuinely thought was involved in any acts of terror. I can't see where that would be possible. And then the fact he's came back to the country to present himself to the court, and there was this other charge, this terror thing. Why did they need to detain him? If he was a flight risk, why did they let him away in July? If you thought he was not going to come back and he presented himself at passport control coming back into the country days later, why would you not lift him then? And I don't know the truth to this. I genuinely don't, and that's why it troubles me. My head spins with it, because I think, where's the logic in this? And I don't know, if he has to go in court for whatever these Terror Act things are, which were basically, Tommy Robinson refused to give his PIN number to police so they could look at his contacts and see if they had any information related to terror acts. Just a mind blower, how that actually came about. It just doesn't make sense. If you genuinely thought someone was involved in acts of terror, why would you let them out of the country? And why would you let them back in for days before you actually went and re-arrested them again? You didn't come into the country and go straight to the police station. If you were this big bad guy, surely when you present yourself at passport control, somebody somewhere goes, that's that guy we're leading for, that's that really, really bad guy. That didn't happen either. And that's weird. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and notifications bell. Put your comments below, let me know what you think about either of these things. If you have any input into the sort of missing things in my story, i.e. when the video was ready, or a bit more information about these Terror Act things, then please do so. But most importantly of all, unless you are involved in this two-tier media, what looks like two-tier judicial system we have, and a two-tier Britain in general, no you, but
everyone else, Have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.